Financial inclusion has come of age in India. The equity cult is now mainstream. Ease of access, awareness, and technology are driving this shift. And behind the scenes, money managers are driving this transformation. Welcome to Beyond the Boardroom, Business Insider India's special feature where we find out how your money is working for you. Sundeep, welcome to Beyond the Boardroom. It's a pleasure to have you with us today. As we discussed a few years ago, the equity cult is now mainstream, with over 10 crore demat accounts being opened, more than 15,000 crore coming into equity schemes on a monthly basis. Could you take us through what's going on right now?
Thanks, Malini, for having me here. No, I think this is just the beginning. I think I remember our discussion a couple of years back. At that point of time, the demat accounts were less than 2-3 crores. The monthly SIP was less than 2,000-3,000 crores, and things have been changing. And I think this is just the starting, especially in the last 2-3 years. Post-COVID, if you see the demat account at that point of time when the COVID started was less about 4.9 crores, and today's touched 10 crores. And even today, when we look at this, it's less than 6-7% of the population of the country is investing in capital markets. But it's a great beginning. I think we've come to a stage where I think the domestic flow has become so strong. I think when you look at the foreign FI money coming in, going out, it remains important, but the domestic flow is today able to manage everything. But what is more exciting is, I remember having this discussion with you many years back. I mean, is this equity cult only in Delhi and Bombay? But the big change that has happened is, I think now the investors are coming from small cities and towns. I think it's unbelievable when you go to some cities. Recently I was in Tamil Nadu, in small cities, people asking you, what is a mutual fund, what is SIP? I mean, it's becoming a part of the mainstream investing. But what is even more interesting is earlier, this money used to come from very matured investors, elderly investors. So I mean, at this point of time, my daughter who just started working, after the first salary, she tells me, Dad, where should I invest my first SIP? So I think this culture is changing, and this is just the starting.
That's an interesting point. I also remember that we had talked about the equity cult going mainstream with a lot of people from beyond the big cities. I think you were a big votary of that. Can you sort of explain how this whole equity cult, and you've taken it deep inside, into the hinterland, literally into smaller towns, smaller tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 towns. Can you explain how you sort of managed to go and sort of take the equity cult deeper?
No, I think it's been a long journey over the years. I think the entire industry, a lot of support from the regulator. I think we have gone very deep now in small cities and towns. I think from our perspective, if you were to see, we were one of the few asset management companies which were not sponsored by a bank. So effectively what made us, I think what was very critical for us was to go deep into smaller cities and towns and educate investors. And that has really paid off well. I think it's surprising, I think many times, a lot of time people thought mutual fund is understood by very highly educated investors in big cities. It's a product for the rich. But I think trend is changing. Today, my driver is also investing in mutual funds. And as you go into small cities, you go to northeastern states, people are, I think after bank deposit, I think I would say the word they are comfortable with in investments is mutual funds. And I think I really feel happy and proud we've been a part of this journey in creating this cult in small cities and towns.
You talked about your daughter, talking about investing, and that's a new class of equity investors, if I may say, so not just equity, and they're new to equity. Also, the fact is that gamification of investment has brought in a lot more millennials and beyond millennial population into the investment environment. Having apps, which are the zero brokerage firms, they give you in a kind of engagement which perhaps some of the other tech platforms give you, right? Whether you're shopping or you're hailing a ride. What about gamification of investment? How is that influencing investor behavior?
Well, it's very interesting. The entire digitalization and gamification, it's changing. The new generation thinks very differently. It's not about what we say, what we tell them. They are going to do their own research. They're going to be taught very differently. So I think, the point what I'm trying to your question, it's very interesting the way they have to be educated, and this gamification is helping them to understand mutual funds better. And not only mutual funds, it's all investment products better. And I think they can connect with them. So I think I have a very strong view that I think when India is, there are micro markets within India. every city is different, every set of investors is different. So again, if I move from one generation to another generation, on one side I have my daughter who likes gamification, likes everything to be done digital. When she finds her, which mutual fund to invest, she'll do her own Google research. On the other side is my father, a retired person, for whom everything is paper even today. So I think he needs his advisor, needs to discuss it. He doesn't want to go online. So I think India is, there are micro markets. So today for us as asset managers, as money managers, I think one thing is very critical. One thing is to manage money. The other thing is also to understand the psyche of the investors, how different people react, how do you reach out to them, how do you offer products to them, how do you understand their needs and understand what excites them. So let me again give you another example. I think when we go to different cities and towns, now there could be cities in Gujarat. Let's say Gujarat is always known for equity culture. Now we see the type of investors who in Gandhinagar are very different from the investors who are in Rajkot. So how do you reach out to them? How do you have to customize. So it's like India is micro markets within micro markets, and that's the way you have to reach out to people.
I remember you telling me that you, as a rule, in a day, respond to investor queries. Do you still do that? Because there was a gentleman you told me about who had written to you how to plan for his daughter's wedding. Do you still get that? And how do you engage with different segments?
So I think firstly, Malini, again, it's always an honor when somebody trusts you with his money. I think, and it's our duty to do our best, because it's not something easy. Nobody will give you your money. I think we feel we are privileged that somebody is trusting us. Secondly, I think what happens is when we have millions of investors, there are different type of investors who have different queries. But there are a couple of investors, investor notes, letters, emails, WhatsApp, which really may leave a mark on you. So I think firstly, I respond to every query that comes to me personally. I don't have any agency that works for me. I feel that's the way I remain connected with my investors, my distributors, my employees. On a daily basis, I get at least in the morning about 100 to 150 WhatsApp messages from good morning to what's your view on this, but I respond to each message within 10 minutes. So that's one thing. But I think what's very gratifying is, I think over the last 20, 25 years that we've been managing money, we get a lot of investor letters, emails. But some of the letters which have been really touching have been investments which were made by, let's take a father, and he passed away, and 15 years later the child comes to know this investment was there, and the mother used this money for the education, or the spouse passes away, it's required, So there are some letters which come, they are so touching, and it's many times, you feel this job is so great that we are helping people to take care of the future, their lives, and many times their next generation also. So I think I personally connect with every letter, every email, every WhatsApp that comes to me personally. I do not, neither anyone in my team responds on my behalf, neither any agency.
You do that on Twitter as well?
I'm very active on Twitter, LinkedIn. I'm not only writing about markets. For me, I like sports. I like, recently we planted 200 trees, So my last tweet was about, planting 200 trees, giving it back to the Mother Earth. So I think I write about anything and everything.
And you talked about, since you're talking about social media, there is an interesting trend which is playing out of influencers, or if we may call finfluencers, who are driving a lot of content on their respective handles, influencing investor behavior. Earlier it was, investor education was a very serious kind of a stuffy activity that very serious people undertook, right? And media played a big role. Today you have a new breed of influencers. What's your view on them? Is it good for investors to follow them and do what they say, or, what's your take on that?
See, again, if you go back to history, before the tech and the fin influencers, go back, there have always been influencers in our life which have created a positive impact. So go back to historically, could be Martin Luther King, Mahatma Gandhi, or as recent as, there could be various sports personalities, I think a lot of these at that point of time, it was not pushed on you. I think you felt that someone is doing a great job, and I think those things connected with you, and I think you imbibed in them and you were influenced by them. Right now with social media being so active, there are too many influencers. As long as these influencers are doing a good job with the right intent, I feel they are doing a very good job for the society. I think as long as it's not being backed by, anything commercials or being told to push something for some commercial gain, I think that is where I think we have to draw a line. And I feel in long run, the end user is matured enough to understand you can get influenced by a paid influencer for some time, but over a period of time you're able to see through. So to your question, I believe some of the genuine ones are doing a great job, and they are, I think it is required, because see what happens is it's very difficult for us to reach out to every individual now, and it is not about only finance, it's about so many other things. I think I follow a couple of influencers for fitness, and I think I don't know them, but I think some of the things that they tell you, that leaves a mark on you. So I think it's good to have influencers as long as the intent and the content is right.
Would you pay an influencer to sort of carry a certain story, or inform people about certain things? Have you ever engaged with them?
No, we have not.
Right. Super. Money managers are known to be stuffy, boring. You're wearing a pink t-shirt. You're looking cool. What's with that?
I don't know I'm cool or not, I think, but I think what happens, you have to understand, every day there used to be time we used to also be in coat and tie all the time. I think whenever I used to leave for office, my daughter used to tell me, Dad, why do you all the time wear your black and whites and the blues? You should wear something more colorful. But that maybe that idea was 10 years back, when she used to tell me. But I think what is happening now, I think what we have to understand is, I think the world is changing around us. I think our consumer is changing. So it's not only me. If you walk around the office, I think a few years back we have made the dress code as casual. I think you can wear what you want. I think it's only you take care when you're meeting an external person. You decide what you have to wear. You have to be appropriate. So I think I'm not cool, but I think what I'll say is, I think what we've done is, I think wear what you're comfortable with. I think, and that's the way, because our consumer today, I think, again coming back to investors who are of the age group of my daughter and others, they don't bother what you wear or on what you talk. I think for them the intent and the content is more important.
So it's important to build a certain culture which is inclusive, and therefore, your dress code need not be as cast in stone as they used to be earlier.
I think there is always going to be learning. If I look back, I myself think, why did we have a dress code that you need to be in ties all the time? I think today, I myself find it very suffocating to be in a tie, unless and until I have to go for some very, very formal meeting. So yes, I think it is. Let people, I think, be what they want to be. Let people be free. Let it be inclusive. I think ultimately, our teams come to office to deliver, and as long as they're delivering what they're supposed to deliver, how does it matter what they wear? So this makes it a little more casual. I think you can walk into anybody's cabin. I think the entire environment in the office becomes light. But let me also tell, when I look back, I think actually the productivity goes up. So I think it's, I keep thinking when I talk to my HR head, I think we should have done this many years back. Why did you do it in 3 years back?
The other thing I want to ask you is, since we are on this note of inclusive workplace policies, you again had told me about bringing in more women. And way back, you talked about bringing in more women into the workforce. How you have a woman fund manager, if I'm not wrong, and you told me that she's an exceptionally good. Why is it that despite all, BFSI still does not have the kind of women representation that it could have had? And what are you doing to bring in more women into the workforce?
So just let me, make it a little, take me back from office to home. At home, we are 4. It's 3 women and I'm the only guy. So I think that's the way it is at home. When I come back to office, I think our workforce was 16% women. I think we have by design, I think as a part of a target, that how do you keep improving it? I think we are nearly touching fair 20%. And I think at the middle level also, I think a lot of senior. You talk about fund managers, so both are one of our fixed income fund managers, Anju. She manages one of the largest funds in the country, and also Meenakshi, on the equity side. So we already have a lot of women fund managers. To your question, I think the trend is changing a lot. Our trend is changing a lot. I think earlier it would be, you see more men. This BFSI was dominated by men, but the trend is changing, is faster than what I thought, and it's the way it's better it is. And let me also explain, one more thing. I think my dealing, starting from home to workplace, I think women are far better managers than men.
Do you see more women CEOs in this sector as well in the times to come?
100%. I think it's already, if you see in the insurance sector, in asset management company, banks, you see the finance minister of the country and the regulator. I think the trend is changing. It's changing faster than we could have been thought of. So I think when I look at a lot of my international peers, I think things in India are far better. And every organization is making in that effort. So I think that effort is there. So even if you see, I think one more trend that I've seen, Earlier, it used to be, when you looked at in the field, it used to be dominated by men. But I think within our sales team also, we have very, very highly motivated and talented women. They're doing a great job.
The last 2-3 years have been, in many ways, has seen a landslide change in terms of investors coming into equities, because the rate cycle had sort of really turned post-pandemic. Interest rates were low. It brought in a lot of new investors into equity because returns in other avenues weren't as lucrative. Do you expect this to continue in times to come? Do you expect flows, domestic flows, to continue? Given that the macro headwinds, overall, global headwinds, there are plenty of headwinds, whether it's prices, rate cycle turning. Do you expect flows to continue?
The way you have to see this, what is the alternative? I think from our perspective, first let's, I think when we talk of the macros, both domestic and international, I think India is becoming better day by day. I think in this entire crisis that has happened right now, also a lot of actions being taken by the global central banks, and look at the action taken by the Indian central bank. I think how well they have balanced the rate hikes and the growth. So I think I'm a very firm believer India growth story remains intact. Recently, I think we've become the 5th largest economy in the world, and I think there's nothing will stop us from being a $5 trillion economy. Now coming to when we took out to look at challenges, I think I've been in this industry for almost now nearly 2.5 decades. Every time there's one challenge on the other. So Mali, I think I'll rather, I'll say there's never been a single day that I think we don't have a challenge. And if there is no challenge, some challenge gets created. When you talk to somebody, will say, mujhe aisa lagta hai, I think things are going to get difficult. But I think what I've realized is, first, I think we have to believe in the India growth story. Number two, I think coming back to the equity culture, I think this culture, the change that is happening in the culture, I think it's not just a question of, I think whether we want it or not. There is no other alternative. Go back, just 10 years back, the fixed deposit rates in any bank, 1-year deposit was also double digit. Today, I think you're talking it's less than 5%. Now, one thing you have to understand in Indians, always confused savings and investments. And when you are getting double digit returns in your savings, you say, why do I need to invest? And also, people like us in our generation were told that equity is not a good thing. Stay away from equity. Gold mein laga do paisa, bank mein rakho. So equity was more like a dirty word. And that is changing. So I think to your question, what has happened in the last 2-3 years, and also your opening that I think we have opened, we are touching 10 crore demat accounts. I feel this trend will continue. There will not be a U-turn. And one more thing, what is very important is we have seen also maturing of investors. So earlier, whenever we used to see, when markets crash, and I'll give you a very different yardstick I measure, So many times, we see how many redemptions happen. That's the question will come. Markets are volatile. Earlier, whenever the markets used to be volatile, fall less than 1%, we used to get 100 calls in a call center at 8 o'clock. What is the NAV? Kya ho raha hai? Because people used to panic. Now, there's a 1% up or down. It doesn't matter. You don't get the calls in the call center also. So people are maturing. So this trend will continue, I think, and I'm a very firm believer. I think there will be a day, every Indian household will be a mutual fund investor. And this cult that is coming through the discount brokers, also the new demat accounts, all these investors are fungible. These investors who are coming to the capital market, whether they invest directly in stocks or they invest through mutual funds, eventually they're coming to the capital markets. And I hope the day is not far away. Every Indian household is a mutual fund investor.
That brings me to my next question, that, there are a lot of new to equity customers. And if you look at an analysis of the demat accounts which are being opened, a lot of these investors are new to equity. And they've only seen a one-way up journey. They have not seen a sharp crash. And for the reasons we discussed earlier, do you feel that their expectations need to be calibrated going forward? And because in the past we have seen that whenever investors have burnt their hands with equity, they never come back. That's something that you faced as a money manager. Should you do anything, or are you doing anything to calibrate returns expectations?
No, I think it's a very valid question. I think this worries me. Two things, first, a lot of new investors came to the industry, again, whether investing in stocks or into mutual funds, and a lot of that credit goes to work from home. People were, now they've gone back to their day jobs. I think what we have to understand, investing is not a part-time thing. It's serious business. I think you're dealing with money. So I think what's important is basically the expectations, and especially these two periods. If I was to go back, 24th of March to 2020 when Nifty touched 7,500, and after that now we are almost touching 17,500, 18,000. So I think people have just seen one way. It worries me, I hope these guys don't start thinking money making is very easy, because you will have all the ups and downs. So from our perspective, I think we are doing a lot to educate investors that I think the expectation should be moderated. Anything mid-teens, I think, is something that you should invest. But more importantly, is also that I think these investors have to understand, because they made such quick money, they took out money, went to cash. Investing is about long term. They were lucky they caught a trend, but this trend cannot continue forever. So, and I worry also, because when 5 crore new demat accounts have been opened during this period, when they have all seen just one good experience, if something wrong was to happen to them, I think they may be the not so happy, class of investors. So I think as an industry, we have to educate these investors, and I think we're doing a lot.
Right. That brings me to the next question. Is a black swan event likely? Where the market's going given the global headwinds, domestic issues, price rise, geopolitical risks, Fed taper, the taper which is likely to start. So what's in store for the markets?
I think the beauty of the word you use, black swan, is something that you can't predict. And so I don't think so. I think what we have realized, I think both as an investor and as an individual, I think there are things which are in your control. Things which are not in your control, you can't do much. What you can control is how you react to them. And I think what my advice to investors will be, you'll always have something or the other coming up, but how do you react to that is going to be the key. And the only way to react to this is no action required. Don't take action. Don't get into an action mode. Many times it's good to, say that I think markets are going up, I should invest more, or markets are going down, I need to redeem. It doesn't work. You have to stay invested. Many times, no action is the best strategy. And that has, I think I've been one of those investors who invested. Once I've invested, I've never redeemed till I need it for some particular goal. And it's worked well for me. Just ignore the sound around you and stay invested, and it helps. And let all this part, what happens to Fed, what happens to oil prices, what happens to ABC, be taken care by us. And that also links up with the earlier point, what you mentioned. A lot of these investors who were investing directly, buying stocks during this period, I think you may be lucky once, but you cannot be lucky many times.
That's a lot of gyan. Can you now tell us where the markets are likely to be headed in the next 6 months, 12 months, and for a longer period of time?
Only if I knew the answer, I would not be here. I'll just put all my money and just be relaxing by the beach. It doesn't work like that. So, but I think broadly, I think India growth story remains intact. I think when you are growing at, I think today 7-8%, I think, and today if you see all around you, India is just getting stronger day by day. So I think for me, the way I see it, it's not about trying to identify where the markets are. I think during this period also, if you let's again, we talked right now, markets touched a low of 7,500 Nifty in March of 2020, and today we are about 18,000. During this period also, there could be funds or stocks which have not done well, and there could be funds which have done, very well. So I think it's not about, guessing where the market is going to be over the next 6 months to 8 months. Directionally, will we continue growing? I think answer is yes. Is India emerging stronger? Answer is yes. And is there any other alternative other than investing in markets? Answer is no. So I think my advice to investors is going to be remain invested. I still remember the old ad of one of the motorbike companies used to be fill it and forget it. That's the way you should do. I think just invest in this market and remain invested. Don't try to time the market. Hold back your emotions. There will be n number of news flows which will come, which will make you jittery. That I think what is going to happen to oil, what is going to happen to Fed, what is going to happen to US, what happens to the war, what happens to China. I think have faith in your own country and keep investing.
Very good point that you make. Coming to this whole trend of passive investing. Passive investing is very big globally. And that's a trend that has come to India a few years ago. You've been a very big votary of passive investing. I remember at a time when the rest of the industry didn't even want to talk about it. Can you explain the merits of passive investing, and what are the categories of people should come into passive versus actively managed and direct equities? So all these three options of entering equities, if you can just explain.
So Mani, I think you're right. I think we were one of the first few ones to start ETFs in India, and at that point of time, I think a lot of my colleagues used to tell me, I think what you're doing is a wrong step. But I think we have always believed as a company that I think what is right for the investor you have to do. Now ETFs. Now I'm no one to decide whether ETF is good for the investor or not. I think it's the investor has to choose. I think my job is to keep offering all the products. And we are also a very firm believer you have to be a good learner. I think if globally, I think ETFs are 70% of the asset management industry. There is no reason why in India we believe that no. I think it works in US and works in rest of the world, but it will not work in India. So we are here basically. I think we are here to offer all the products to the investor, and without only thinking about what is more profitable for us. That was the background for us to launch. And fortunately, when you look now, I think we fast forward 4 or 5 years later, I think we are about 80% of the volume on the stock exchanges. So we were able to catch that trend early. But now coming back to why ETFs. Now, we have to understand there are different categories of investors: matured, young investors, savvy investors, and some investors in the middle. Now, different investors will have different needs. Now, there will be investors who want to start their investment journey with the active funds. They'll come whether through SIPs starting 100 rupees. There will be investors who will mature, who will move into, within mutual funds, move to sectoral funds and others. And then there will be the next set of investors who I'll say if the top of the pyramid, they'll say they'll start moving to ETFs. They want to do their own self-allocation. They want to decide where they want to be. They don't want the fund manager to take the call. They say, I think I want to be in banking. I want to be in Nifty. I want to be, in mid cap. I want to do whatever. They want to take the call. So these set of investors prefer going to ETFs. And also with the advent with the coming of the new broking, these DMATs and various discount brokers, a lot of DMAT accounts which have opened, these investors, some of them wanted to buy stock, some wanted to buy ETF. So I think effectively it is the investor who has to decide. But I think the more important thing is if you know what you want, I think then it comes to ETF. I think if you think that you need the help of a fund manager to invest in the market, then it's the active funds. So I think we'll continue having active, passive, and I think we let the investors decide what it is. From our perspective, I think we are very clear. Different set of investors will have different needs, and I think we'll keep launching products and let them decide what is best for them. And we are no one to decide based on what is more profitable for us.
Right. Nippon AMC also, perceives itself not just as a money management company, but also a fintech, because you source a lot of your clients directly. This is again a debate which nobody in the industry wants to have, because you have your distributor community and you have the investor community, which in large droves now wants to come direct. They do not want to go through a distributor. So if you could explain this whole phenomena of going direct versus going through a distributor. And we had done some back of the envelope calculations which show that if you've chosen the right fund and you've gone direct, the returns are significantly better. So if you could explain this whole phenomena of going direct, which seems to be catching on with investors, and if you can explain that and how you engage with your customers.
No, I think what we have to understand, there are two parts to it: going direct and using an advisor. These are two different things. I think while you said that there's also a possibility, I think if you were to someone to invest directly over a longer period of time, 5-10 years, there could be a big difference in return. And the reverse is also true. I think if you were to choose a fund which is direct, but you choose the wrong fund, I think then the returns could be even worse, So it works both ways. So I think in this is not a binary thing. It's direct or advisor. The answer lies in having an advisor who can help you to choose which funds to go for. So effectively, it's not if you go direct that you will not be using an advisor. I think I've seen very few investors in India who understand the space so well that they know what is required, because it's not just about when we are talking of investing in mutual funds. Your portfolio is not just made of mutual funds. I think it's an asset allocation. There could be multiple other products. How do you ensure there's not an overlap? So I think the answer lies in somewhere in the middle. Yes, by going direct, you can save money, because the expense is low, but at the same time, you can also go extremely wrong. So it's important to have a right advisor, then let him advise you whether you can go for direct or not. And I'll tell you, I've seen a lot of advisors have been advising investors to go direct. And the investors have been paying fees to the advisors also, because eventually I think they're also making a lot of money because of that advice.
Right. My last question as in this format is basically that, the industries large cap actively managed funds have found it difficult to essentially beat the benchmark returns. Is that a sign of maturity in the market, or does it show that fund managers are not able to create alpha?
No, I think it's not a question of the markets have matured. I think the markets have become more efficient. And what clearly, if I remember when we started, we acquired a Goldman with the ETF business at that point of time. Someone asked me this question that I think, do you think alpha generation will be difficult? I think at that point of time, what I answered, I'm repeating the same thing right now. I think I don't see alpha generation as a problem. But if there's one category that can be hit, which will be impacted, could be large cap, because eventually, I mean, there is a limitation to your investing in the top stocks. I think the markets are becoming more and more efficient. And today, effectively, if you were to see a small large cap fund which has a fees of, let's take 250 basis point over a 5-year period, you're talking of about 12% fees, compounded 17%. To create an alpha of 20% plus in a large cap fund, there could be chances ETF may challenge this category before it challenges any other category.
Super. Now we are going to do something very interesting with you, which is a rapid fire question and answer format. I'll throw a question at you, and quick responses is what we are looking for. So is direct investment better or an advisory route?
The answer lies in the middle. I think you need an advisor to tell you where to invest, because again, I mentioned earlier, if you were to go into a direct plan and choose the wrong fund, your chances of losing are very high. So it's important to have the right advisor who can advise you which direct fund to go for.
If I'm a new to equity customer, should I opt for ETF or an actively managed fund?
I think it's important to start with an active fund.
Gold or silver ETF?
For me, I like gold in any form.
What is your relationship with money?
I think money is important. I think money helps you give the freedom to do what you want to do. But it's a love and hate relationship. You need money for your basic life, but I think too much of money is also bad.
ULIPs or mutual funds?
Mutual funds for sure, even if not because I'm a part of the mutual fund industry. When I advise my father where to invest, I strongly advise to go for mutual funds, not to go for ULIPs. I think mutual funds are far more transparent and cost efficient.
Investing in India or investing global?
I love India. No, and I think the opportunities in India are too huge. I think no country can offer the opportunities what India offers. So it has to be India.
One piece of advice you'll give to investors who are going into direct equity for the first time?
There is a lot of thrill when you go in investing directly. I think don't confuse thrill with your actual investments for long term. For thrill, there is a lot more in life. But when you're dealing with money, it's serious business. Go for mutual funds.
If you're not a money manager, what would you do in life?
I'm a hardcore foodie. I would have opened a restaurant.
What's your next big purchase?
The new Apple Watch was launched. I'm into running, so I love the fitness features in that. So that's going to be the next one, which is Apple Watch Series 8.
Where do you go running in here in Mumbai?
The beauty about running is you don't need, you don't need anything, any place. You just need your shoes. So I think you start running on the roads. So I run in my complex. I go to Marine Drive. So one thing, even when I travel, two things are fixed in my bag. One is my shaving kit. Other is my running kit. It has helped me to change personality also, because running is something that's one of the only things where you're not competing with anybody. You're competing with yourself. You are just saying how you're getting better than compared to what you were yesterday. So that's the beauty about running. So before my every board meeting, every important meeting, I ensure that day morning I run. So I talk to myself.
Thank you so much for joining us on Beyond the Boardroom, Sundeep, and we look forward to having you back with us sometime soon.
Thank you very much, Malini. Look forward.